The visit comes as more than 500 federal agents try to stop Mexican drug cartel violence from spilling into the U.S. And Transportation Secretary LaHood works to keep over $2 billion in trade going with our south of the border neighbor. With more on the battle at the border, I'm joined by Republican Representative Brian Bilbray of California and Sidney Weintraub, the Simon Chair in Political Economy at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Good morning, gentlemen. Good to see you guys.
Good morning, Alexis.
Congressman,
good morning, Alexis.
Good morning. Let me first, Congressman, start with you. Secretary Clinton is traveling. This is day 2 of her trip. What is she hoping to achieve out of this visit?
Well, I think there's some patching up to be done, sort of a coming together of minds on a very critical component, and that is the security of our southern border and the real battle going on down in Mexico. I mean, we're talking about our neighbors to the south are not only fighting to protect themselves from the drug cartels, but also to make sure that they do not start inflicting major damage onto our side of the border.
A little bit of a faux pas yesterday, or I guess it's something, I don't know what you want to call it, but a lot of people are highlighting the fact that the Secretary of State said that there's some U.S. failed policies on basically on drug policies on our end of the border. A lot of people focusing on that. Is it the United States' issue here? Is it Mexico's issue? Is it a combination of both of us that's fueling this fire?
Look, you're going to expect faux pas. You got to understand that most people from Washington have no idea what's going on in Latin America. This is almost like a political black hole. We talk about Africa, we talk about Asia and China, but our own backyard, people like the Secretary really don't have a lot of background there. And growing up on the border, I understand why they don't. I mean, people are intimidated by it. But I think that we do have a major responsibility, but political correctness and not wanting to look mean-spirited so often here in Washington has reflected in a lack of definitive and strong action along our southern frontier that creates the atmosphere where the bad guys not only are allowed to survive, they flourish because of our lack of involvement, our lack of commitment along our southern border.
Sidney, let me bring you in here. There is a lot of, I guess the heat is rising in this situation here because the president has rescinded some funding. It's caused the Mexicans to increase tariffs on a list of products. First of all, what does that mean for us in the future of NAFTA? And secondly, how do we heal this wound knowing that there's such a great deal of violence across the border?
You're referring to the Mexican retaliation about raising the tariffs on about 79 products because of the U.S. Violation of its agreements in NAFTA. The U.S. in NAFTA agreed to open the border to Mexican trucks bringing cargo to the United States. We didn't do it. We were supposed to do it in 2000. We're now in 2009. There was an experimental program going on. It was working well, and the Congress voted to cut off the funding. The president signed it, and the Mexicans, who have been quite patient after they won case after case in the United States, decided that the United States really, if it's going to violate its agreements, ought to get a certain amount of retaliation. They chose carefully, and that's the issue. The issue is that we were catering to protectionists in the United States, and the Mexicans reacted. I think Congress really has to be a lot more careful in not deliberately violating U.S. obligations under treaties.
Congressman, would you agree? Because the Transportation Secretary, Ray LaHood, is trying to actually fix this problem, get those trucks back over the borders, but it's a dangerous place right now.
Well, it is a dangerous place, but the fact is this was not tied actually to our border violence problem. It was the fact that, in all fairness, there were major contributors, very active in the trucking industry, labor especially, that said, look, we want to take this one out. And they pressured Congress and the president to basically renege on a treaty without going back to the drawing boards and asking for a renegotiation. This was a unilateral action taken by us. It was good politics in the last election, but it's bad policy when it comes down to, does America have treaty obligations? If we didn't want to do this, we shouldn't have signed the treaty to start with. And if we don't want to do it in the future, then we ought to show that we believe in the rule of law and common decency, is saying let's sit down and renegotiate this. But politics took precedence over good policy here, and I don't think it's an issue of wanting these trucks on American streets or not. The fact is, do we stand by our treaties, and can the American word be trusted?
Sydney, as we finish up here, you tell me, what does the future look like for Mexico right now? So much talk about the nationalism. I mean, how do they fix what's going on in their own neck of the woods?
Not easily. Mexico had gotten its finances in order during the 1990s. They were doing quite well until the middle of last year. A lot of investment was coming into Mexico. Its economy was beginning to grow again. There were some problems, but it was in general in pretty good shape. And then the crash in the United States, the financial collapse, has hit Mexico particularly hard. And now Mexico's economy is falling. It's aggravated by all of the violence of drugs. Hillary Clinton said something yesterday that the U.S. government hasn't said in the past and should have, is that our consumption is one of the things that's fueling a lot of the violence, because the cartels that sell the drugs to the United States are fighting among themselves as to who has best access to the lucrative U.S. market. You asked at the beginning of this session, whose policy is at fault? And I would answer both countries are at fault.
All right. Well, gentlemen, a great conversation. Of course, we'll continue to follow this. I mean, look, the Mexican peso down 40% in the past 4 months as this violence has escalated. Sydney and Congressman Bilbray, gentlemen, thank you very much.
Alexis, thank you very much.